All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are talking about one of the most dramatic comeback stories in the entire UK pub industry. It's the story of a company that was, frankly, at the bottom of the barrel with its own landlords, and then staged this massive 15-point turnaround. This is the story of Star Pubs and Bars.
So let's wind the clock back just a couple of years to 2023. Star Pubs and Bars was in a really tough spot. I mean, look at this number. The satisfaction score from their own publicans, the very people running their pubs, was a dismal 55%. In this industry, that's pretty much rock bottom.
But fast forward to today, and that score has absolutely skyrocketed to 70%. That is a 15-point jump in just 2 years. Seriously, that's the biggest leap of any major pub company out there. It's a remarkable change, no question about it.
So, that's the big question, right? How on earth did they do it? What's the secret sauce behind this massive jump in satisfaction? Is this just about them being nicer to their landlords, or is there something, a lot more strategic going on behind the curtains? Well, let's find out.
First, we really need to grasp just how rocky things were for Star. Before this big comeback, they had a reputation for being, well, a bit of a difficult, underperforming corporate landlord. They were huge, for sure, but they were definitely not loved by the people on the ground.
So who exactly are we talking about? Star Pubs and Bars is one of the UK's biggest pubcos, as they're called, with about 2,500 pubs in their portfolio. But here's the single most important detail you need to know. They are owned by the global brewing giant Heineken. And that connection, well, it's absolutely central to everything that happens next.
Okay, now for the how. This turnaround was no accident. It was all driven by a brand new strategy, and one that was heavily funded and, let's be honest, heavily influenced by their parent company Heineken.
Their game plan really boils down to 3 key moves. First, they started to seriously leverage Heineken's deep pockets and resources. Second, they rolled out these more modern, franchise-style agreements for their landlords. And third, they just poured cash into major refurbishments to get the pubs themselves looking top-notch.
So the big question is, did it actually work? Well, that 15-point jump kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Let's break down the tangible, real-world benefits that landlords have been seeing that are driving this new wave of satisfaction.
For landlords, the good news was pretty comprehensive. All of a sudden, they had access to these huge global beer brands like Heineken and Moretti. Plus, they were getting marketing support they could never dream of affording on their own. The new franchise models also made it cheaper to get started, the pubs were in much better condition, and their day-to-day contacts, their business development managers, or BDMs, were apparently a whole lot more responsive.
And you don't have to take my word for it. This landlord from a recent survey absolutely nails it. See, it's not just about having beer. It's about having brands that customers already know and want, and then backing that up with professional marketing. For a small pub, that is a huge leg up.
And that investment in the pubs themselves, it had an immediate, powerful impact. As this landlord on Reddit points out, instead of taking over a tired, run-down place, they walked into a business that was already looking good and making money. That's a total game changer.
But of course, it's never that simple, is it? It's not all good news. For all the amazing improvements, Star is still a massive corporation. And with that comes what you might call the corporate catch. This is the other side of the coin.
Yeah, this is where things get a bit more complicated. Probably the biggest frustration for many is the strict beer tie. This is pretty standard in the industry, but it means landlords have to buy most of their beer from Heineken. That limits choice. Add in some uncertainty around pub closures, a lot of corporate red tape, and the fact that the support you get can be a total lottery, and you can see why some frustrations are still there.
And this really gets to the heart of the trade-off, doesn't it? You get the power and recognition of a global brand, but you lose the freedom to put on a couple of amazing local ales from the brewery down the road. For landlords who really pride themselves on that local character, it feels, well, restrictive. And then there's the consistency problem. While satisfaction with the BDMs is up across the board, one landlord's experience can be totally different from another's. It just goes to show that even when the high-level strategy is working, the execution on the ground isn't always perfect.
So 70% is a huge improvement, we know that. But what does that number actually mean when you look at the rest of the industry? To really understand Star's comeback, we have to see how they stack up against their biggest rivals.
And when you put it in context, you can really see the story. Way up at the top, you've got Admiral Taverns at 79%. They're known for being really community-focused. Way down at the bottom, you've got Stonegate, struggling at 43%. And right there, smack in the middle, is Star. They're the climber at 70%. They've escaped the basement, but they're not quite at the top of the league yet.
You can see here that Star's strength, that Heineken backing an investment, is really clear. It's put them well ahead of rivals like Punch and Stonegate. But they're still trailing the leaders, Admiral and Green King, who tend to score higher on things like flexibility and having a genuine community feel. Star has clawed its way back to being a solid mid-table player.
I think this landlord sums it up perfectly. Star isn't Admiral, but it's not Stonegate either. They're climbing. That quote just captures the feeling perfectly. This is a company in motion. No longer the worst, not yet the best, but on a path that a lot of people see as a really good thing for the industry as a whole.
So, let's bring it all together. What's the final verdict here? After looking at the good, the bad, and the competition, is signing up with StarPubs a smart move, or is it still a risky bet?
Well, it really all depends on what you, as a potential landlord, are looking for. If you want the safety net and the power of a global brand, if you like a structured system, and if you love the idea of a freshly refurbished pub, then Star is a really compelling option. But if your dream is to champion local craft beers and run your pub with total creative freedom, you should probably think twice.
The bottom line is this: Star Pubs and Bars is a company on the mend. They have successfully dragged themselves up from the very bottom of the rankings. They are not perfect, and those corporate strings are very much attached, but their story is undeniably one of the most significant comebacks this industry has seen in a long, long time.
And that really leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? In today's tough economy, is the immense power of a corporation like Heineken a necessary lifeline that keeps our beloved local pubs afloat? Or is it a leash, restricting the very freedom and character that makes them so special in the first place? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.